The most important ethical rule is that you never prosecute a case where you have reasonable doubt.
You put it on the record, you said, I know Chris Kane, and it will not affect my decision in this case. And the DA, who was sitting at a table in front of me, was like looking over his shoulder, like, who the hell is this guy?
I saw an old man pulling a rifle out of his trunk, trying to shoot. At that point, the jury just, what? We just heard the sheriff and the highway patrol say there was no gun. And that's when I learned about cover-ups. I came back to Salinas and I put my resignation on my boss's desk. I resigned.
So welcome back to the Defensible podcast, where we talk about criminal defense and all things legal. Today, we are honored to have a retired judge who spent over 20 years on the bench, who has a wealth of knowledge for us to talk about. So please help me welcome Albert Maldonado. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Chris. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming on. So you and I are friends, and I know quite a bit about you, but the viewers may not know. Let's talk about your story. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Redlands, California, near San Bernardino. My grandfather moved there from Mexico during the Mexican Revolution. He was 15 years old. At that time, the Mexican government was hanging 14, 15-year-old boys if they didn't join the military. He was in the state of Michoacan, and he went to Brownsville, Texas, then to Chicago, worked in the railroads, and from there to Los Angeles. And then he settled in Redlands because the mountains, the San Gorgonio Mountains, reminded him of the mountains in Michoacan. My father was born in Redlands. My mother was born in Claremont, near the Claremont colleges, and I was born in Redlands.
Where did you go to college?
Went to the University of Redlands, my own hometown.
Nice.
I never realized that I would actually end up going to that university. I met my wife there. I majored in political science and history. So that's where I did my my college.
Interesting. And then right after that, not long after college, you joined the military. Is that right?
No, I went to law school.
You went to law school?
I went to the University of California, Berkeley, law school in 1969.
I see.
I was there during the rioting, the shooting, the tear gas, 10,000 people in the street in Berkeley. I saw that. I saw police cars with captives, prisoners, students who had been arrested, women particularly for throwing tear gas back at the National Guard. And I saw a couple in white tennis clothing playing tennis while all this rioting and shooting was going up.
Yeah, that's an interesting juxtaposition.
1969, and then I was drafted.
Yeah.
I was drafted while in law school, and that's how I found Monterey. I was sent to Fort Ord.
I see. But you did go out to Vietnam.
Right. What happened was it was here in Monterey for 1 year. And then I actually walked from Fort Ord to Monterey, PG, Lover's Point on weekends.
Nice.
I take a bus back. And that's how I discovered Monterey. That was one of the factors in my life that motivated me to come back here. I worked for a federal magistrate in downtown Monterey, Judge Francis Carr. And then the military sent me to Vietnam.
What was your job out in Vietnam?
My job in Vietnam was with the Staff Judge Advocates Corps, which is the military justice system. And in the United States Army, in the JAG Corps, you go by the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Right.
And what is cool about military justice is that lawyers and law clerks, you have to go 6 months offense, which means prosecute, right. And then you change, you go 6 months defense, you defend. So that was my first criminal defense. And again, in Vietnam, I saw rioting. I saw 10,000 Buddhist monks fighting the government. Buddhist monks were lighting themselves on fire. And I could not believe it. I could not believe my eyes. But during all of the rioting and the tear gas, I saw an Air Force couple in green tennis uniforms playing tennis that I had seen a year before in Berkeley.
That's an interesting motif. How did that affect you, seeing the rioting, seeing civil unrest juxtaposed with people going on with their ordinary lives?
What it did is it showed me our division in our society. And I would tell other captains in Saigon, you guys don't understand what's happening back home.
Right.
The American people are divided over the Vietnam War. They are becoming more and more frustrated. The war technically was in 54 when we aided the French,
Mm-hmm.
and then 64 when we sent Green Berets. And here we are in 1971, and we're still fighting this war. So it made me think that the United States colonial power was still there, aiding the former French. And then when I did see combat, it was in a village, and you could see kids, you could see children. And when I was in Saigon, downtown Saigon, I actually saw 7-year-old children on skateboards.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, why are they skating on their knees? And then another soldier told me, hey, man, they don't got knees. Their legs have been blown off. That's why they go on skateboards. It made me anti-war.
Right.
So when I came back home, back to Berkeley, it made me anti-war.
Mm-hmm.
And it carried on to this point where when I became a lawyer here in Monterey and in Salinas, I joined the Veterans for Peace,
right,
which was an anti-war organization.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's how we met, playing poker.
Right, with other veterans that were anti-war.
Mm-hmm. So what was your first job after the military?
The first job that I had was finishing law school. I worked in legal aid. Legal aid in Oakland, El Centro Legal de la Raza, which was a poverty-based program. I then worked for Casa Ramona, which is a San Bernardino Riverside legal aid, legal services for seniors, Legal Services Corporation. So about the first 2 years, I did legal aid.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went from there to being a law clerk for the 4th District Court of Appeal in San Bernardino. I worked for appellate justices. So that was my beginning of my law career.
So that's where we found the case that you co-authored in this book right here.
We were, law clerks are really ghostwriters. The judge gives you this is inside secret. There are justices on courts of appeal that reviewed superior court judges in the different counties in California. I was working in a court of appeal, the 4th, that had Orange County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, and Indio County. And we would review decisions that went up on appeal to the 4th District Court of Appeal. And justices would throw briefs on your desk, and they go, look this over, and give me your memorandum, write an opinion for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we were. We were ghostwriters.
Right. That's it's a fun job to be the guy behind the scenes. You eventually came up to Monterey County, and you worked for the county council here?
I did. The county council's office was basically a government agency. We represented all of the board of supervisors, the sheriff, the parks, social welfare. So any county Monterey program, we were the attorneys. It was a large office.
Right. Had
about 25 to 30 lawyers. Before that, though, I was in private practice for about 9 years.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
In Redlands and in San Bernardino. And then I went and became a civil rights attorney.
Oh, wow.
I sued mainly police agencies for abuse, wrongful death, violation of civil rights. And I did that in LA. I had a very successful practice in downtown Los Angeles, where I would go to court, the federal courthouse. And basically, I cut my teeth on representing Native Americans, women, Latinos, African American community. And it was a good living. I got to travel all over the United States. And but basically, I was there in downtown federal court.
I see.
That's where I got my skills. So
ultimately, you got hired at the district attorney's office. How did they pick you up with that background?
What happened was I ran for county council. And the county council is chosen by the board of supervisors. And so you need 3 votes on the Board of Supervisors. I was one of the candidates, and I lost on a 3-2 vote. So I had 2 supervisors that supported me, 3 that voted for someone else. That point in the county counsel's office, I was given an assignment to sue the Speaker of the Assembly, Willie Brown. Brown appoints people on the Coastal Commission,
Right.
as the leader of the Assembly. The governor of California also appoints a member on the California Coastal Commission.
I see.
And then the Board of Supervisors of each county, they also vote for a candidate to be a member of the California Coastal Commission. And in this part of the beautiful, natural Monterey Bay, one is appointed, and the board wanted a member from the Santa Cruz community. I think it was the mayor of Santa Cruz, female. Willie Brown wanted a person from the African American community in Seaside. And I was given the directive to sue Willie Brown to force him to appoint a Santa Cruz a person. And what I did is I resigned. I actually did the lawsuit. I actually took it to Sacramento. I showed it to Mr. Brown's secretary. I did not actually file it. I got it stamped, but not actually filed. And you can do that. You can get a filings, but I don't want it filed. I just want it acknowledged.
Sure.
Legally. And I came back to Salinas and I put my resignation on my boss's desk. I resigned. Dean Flippo, the district attorney of Monterey County, was my client. I represented the district attorney's office.
I see.
I also represented the sheriff of Monterey County. And Dean heard about my leaving, and he offered me a job.
Nice.
And when he hired me, he gave me the highest rank and the highest pay scale. And that motivated me to join the district attorney's office.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Good for you. How long were you at the DA's office?
I was in the DA's office for about 3 years.
And tell me about the cases that you prosecuted.
They were run-of-the-rhyme DUI cases, which I enjoyed. A lot of petty thefts. I later became the sexual assault division head for sexual crimes against women and children, and criminal sexual assault. And I was trained well. I was sent to San Francisco for 2 months to be trained, and I came back. I worked my way up and did a lot of felonies: kidnapping, rape, armed robbery, a lot of fraudulent fraud work. And then I went up and to the big time, and I started doing homicide cases. And the most significant one was a homicide case with death penalty involving 4 men and a young teenager who went into a house of a corporate director of Tanner & Nannel. Tanner & Nannel is the largest lettuce company in the world. Salinas is the largest agricultural empire of the world.
That's right.
We do $10 billion with a B, $10 billion worth of business in the Salinas Valley, in this part of the Golden State. And I lived in Monterey for 10 years. My children all went to school there. My wife taught there. And with the Pebble Beach, the golf, all of the tournaments, the aquarium, they only gross $1 billion. Right. So the power is here in Salinas. Tanner & Nannel had a corporate director of the cooling plant. And 4 men thought that Mr. Ward, James Ward, had the payroll, which is a stupid thought. A big corporation, that the payroll would be in an executive's home in his house.
Right, in a safe or something.
In a safe in a bedroom.
Right.
So they burglarized it in the night, 1 a.m. There was a wife, Mrs. Ward, confidentially, I won't mention her name, a 16-year-old. And the 4 men went in. They demanded the money. They demanded where it was, and they pistol whipped Mrs. Ward, Cheryl Ward. They took Mr. Ward, put him in a closet on all of his fours, and they raped. 2 men raped the 16-year-old on the master bedroom, the mother and father's bedroom, and they did it with a shotgun.
Horrific.
They did it by a shotgun. And it is amazing. This family says, by the grace of God, it was not flesh. Our daughter's not pregnant. They did cold steel in raping her. The father could hear his daughter resisting. He then got up. He forced his way up. And one of the defendants who actually had the shotgun got off of the girl, went into the bedroom, and he hit Mr. Ward in his spine with the stock of the shotgun. The shotgun went off, and Patrick Balance, the main defendant, shot Mr. Ward in the spine and killed him. They all then left. And I prosecuted that murder case. I prosecuted against it's a matter of public record, Patrick Balance, Lester Polk, John Balance, and John Drayton. So, and there was a 15-year-old, and I had a co-prosecutor named Gary Meyer, Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
He was a 22-year veteran of the DA's office. He was more skilled than I, had more experience than I. So Dean Flippo put me to join Gary Meyer,
mm-hmm.
and it was a 2-man team, and we prosecuted the death penalty against the first 2. And then the other ones pled guilty and got life sentences. As a prosecutor, that was the most important case I had in my life, because for the first time, I had to deal with victims, real victims, a mother,
right,
a 16-year-old, psychologically damaged. But ask me questions about defense in Southern California, and I'll tell you about my defense life.
Let's talk about that. What was that like?
It was wonderful. It was high power. I was in the public defender's office of San Bernardino County.
Mm-hmm.
San Bernardino County is the largest county in the world. Goes all the way from LA County through the Mojave Desert to Nevada. It's just long, big. The Mojave Desert is there. It is just a big, large desert landscape. My client was a tow truck driver. Guys that you see on the road putting cars and trucks, lifting them, putting them on their truck, and then taking them wherever the repairs has to make. So my client on a Sunday afternoon was riding in the desert near the Nevada border near Baker, California.
Yes.
And he went into a coffee shop, sort of like a Denny's, and he was on his way out. As he was exiting, another vehicle, a Cadillac, cut him off. And so they were then playing chicken, who's going to go out of the parking lot first. Mind you, this ends up in murder. These road rage cases, they end up in murder.
Yeah.
So the old man, he was an older man, 84, he gets in his Cadillac, goes on the freeway, headed towards Vegas. And what he does is he slows down. He won't let the tow truck. Perry Allen, that was my client's name, tow truck. Perry was 6'4", about 29 years old, a T-shirt, blue jeans, boots, and built like an athlete, like a baseball player, like a shortstop, just strong. And he was irritated. This old man is going out back and forth, lane to lane, not letting Perry go around him. So Perry went around him and he did the same game. He slowed down and would not let the elderly driver get around him. The elderly driver then got ahead, parked on the side of the road, and Perry said, "I'm going to park on the side of the road." He parked about 50 meters ahead of the car. Perry gets out of his tow truck, walks back, and the old man is pulling out a rifle from his trunk.
Oh, wow.
So my client sees that. He says, I better get up there and get rid of that rifle before he gets it all out. They struggle. And the rifle is fought over. And finally, Perry hits him in the chest 3 times and kills him.
Mm.
The elderly gentleman's wife was in the car, and she comes out with a flashlight, and she hits Perry over his right eyebrow, cutting it. He pushes her down. And so that's what he's charged with, assault on an elderly woman and first-degree murder against the elderly man. So there are 2 versions, like any other case, as you would know, in
At
defense.
least.
There's always 2 sides. And you just can't look at, elderly man killed by 6'4", terrific built young cowboy. I was assigned the case as a public defender. And having talked to my client, we knew that there was a rifle involved, a .22 caliber Ruger rifle. The police reports mention no rifle.
Interesting.
The sheriffs mention no rifle. The highway patrol mentions no rifle. This was the most significant defense case I've ever had in my career because I would never think that law enforcement would hide the ball and would cover up evidence. I never in my life thought that they would do that. And I never in my life thought that I would uncover it in a court of law. Never in my wildest dreams. And the only reason I uncovered it is because in San Bernardino Public Defender's Office, we had investigators. And Chris, as you know, as a defense attorney, if you have an outstanding investigator, and women and men, a lot of women in law enforcement, and they crack a case and they find out what happens, you win your case.
Yes.
You get that not guilty verdict, which is it's just a thrill. It's just a thrill to hear a jury foreman say, or she, we find the defendant not guilty.
How did it come out?
My investigator was Les Perance, a former deputy sheriff, lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at the police reports and he looked at the highway patrol report. And the sheriffs had mentioned all the possible witnesses. And the highway patrol gave it to the sheriffs. You take over the case. And they just listed witnesses, many of them the same. But there was one additional witness that was not interviewed.
Mm.
That additional witness was a Santa Barbara police officer. So Bill Lesperance went up to Santa Barbara, talked to the police officer. He said, were you in Holleran Summit, Yermo in the Mojave Desert on March the 10th, 1976? Yes. Did you see a fight going on? He said, I sure did. What did you see? I saw an old man pulling a rifle out of his trunk, trying to shoot this truck driver.
Yeah.
Just trying to shoot him. And the truck driver punched him back. Would you be willing to testify to that in a court of law? I sure would. Why? He's been charged with murder. What? Yeah, he's been charged with murder.
Yeah.
There were many witnesses that were vacationers going through the desert who saw the same thing. Their version was what I just told you. This young buck killed an old man and pushed an old lady down.
Mm.
About 10 of them all said the same thing. And here's a jury hearing just one side.
Right.
At 3:00 in the afternoon, the Santa Barbara traffic cop, he's a traffic motorcycle cop, comes into the courtroom with his helmet underneath his arm, his belt buckle, the gun, the boots, takes the stand. And I asked him, were you in Yermo, California at 3:00 on March the 10th, 1976? Did you see a rifle? Did you see a rifle in the trunk of the car and a fight over that rifle? He said, yes, I did. At that point, the jury just, what? We just heard the sheriff and the highway patrol say there was no gun, no rifle. Answer your question, not guilty.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, the judge called us in his chambers he told the captain of the homicide division, they must have known each other because they were addressing each other by the first name. Harry, the captain referred to Judge Chapman as Roy and Harry. And Roy says to Harry, if I don't have that damn rifle in my chambers in an hour, I'm going to turn all of you people in to the Attorney General for obstruction of justice.
Yeah, it's Brady material.
And they brought in the rifle in a bag marked March 10th, 1976, and a handgun.
Interesting.
There was also a handgun involved that he testified to the traffic officer from Santa Barbara. Long story short, Judge Chapman said, Mr. Maldonado, you can go out and reopen the case, reopen everything. So I called every sheriff that was involved in the case.
Right.
And I said, did you ever see this rifle? Yeah. Why didn't you tag it? Why didn't you put it? We didn't think it was important. Every one of them said, we didn't think it was important. We didn't think it was important.
Mm.
And that's when I learned about cover-ups.
Right.
And that's why I started suing cops in civil rights cases because of that public defender.
That's amazing.
That experience gave me the gumption. Okay, I'm going to start suing cops for lying, covering up. And I did that already in Vietnam. We have to go offense and defense in the staff judge advocate's office.
How have like body cameras and dash cams in vehicles changed law enforcement?
It's amazing. My partner, John Jimenez, had a murder case in Riverside County. He represented a 15-year-old boy that was killed by a baton chokehold.
Mm.
And this has to do with cell phones, cameras, etc. Back in the 70s, there were no cell phones.
Right.
There were no videos, unless you had a camera like this, huge one. But who has time to set up a tripod?
Hold it on their shoulder.
And do all that, except for Rodney King. My client, John's client, was a 15-year-old boy as a passenger. The vehicle was stopped for some traffic violation. This is 2 p.m. It's hot. It's about 100 degrees. The Riverside police come in, and they stop the vehicle. They take John's client, the 15-year-old boy, out of the car, and they go, where is your ID? And the 15-year-old says, it's in the glove compartment. I said, well, go get it. So the 15-year-old goes in, opens the glove compartment, and when he does that, one officer, black uniform, pulls him out, throws him on the ground, puts his knee on his back, puts the baton over his neck and breaks it, kills him, murders him. All because he didn't get his license out fast enough.
Mm.
This was a Brownie camera case. There was his grandmother, the 15-year-old's grandmother, and this occurred in front of the 15-year-old grandmother's house. Grandma goes in and takes a Brownie camera, and she takes 7 or 8 shots with her Brownie camera of the episode. And John said, there's only one defendant here. There's only one cop with dirt on his uniform. The cop that pulled him out, threw him on the dirt sidewalk, and choked him out.
It's all of them.
John sent the Brownie camera to Mexico City, to the Bank of Mexico, Banca, and we had it stored there. The DA of Los Angeles, John Vandekamp, wanted the camera and the prints. And John said, I don't trust you. I think you're going to, because I told him what my public defender did. Hey, man, they're going to screw you over, man. Well, I said, they're going to lose it.
Mm.
They're going to lose that camera. How do you know, Albert? I said, because they lost a gun, a rifle in one of my murder cases. Don't trust them. Don't trust them. He won about $15 million for that boy. Yeah, $15 million for the chokeout.
Interesting. It's an amazing story. And then when you were on the bench, or how did you end up running for judge?
I ran for judge in San Bernardino County in 1980. Mm-hmm. I was one of the 2 top finalists for an appointment. I met Governor Brown personally, and he had offered me a job before on the California Youth Authority. When I was a public defender, he asked me if I would, and I said, I'm going into private practice, and I really wouldn't have time to be on the California Youth Authority board. But I knew him then and back in my... So I came Came 1980, and he appointed women. Women were the big thing then, which was right, to integrate our judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my first experience with campaigning for an appointment. That was my first experience. When I moved up here, after the murder trial that I did for the DA's office on the Ward, we call it the Ward case,
Mm-hmm.
the Jim Ward case. Rick Annell, the president and CEO of Tanner Annell, says, "You know, Albert, you should run for judge. We saw you in court. You should run for judge." And then also being Latino, I was the president of the Latino La Raza Lawyers Association. I was the president. I was a member of LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens. I was active in the Latino community. I was active in South County, all of the Valle, the Salinas Valle, all of that. So I had a coalition of groups, and that's how you win judgeships when you run for office. Like any other political, you have to have groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I had Latino groups. I had I had the agricultural community that helped raise money for me, and they advocated for me and actually sent representatives to Sacramento. I'm a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I worked for Robert Kennedy's campaign in 1968 when he was shot and murdered. So I've always been a Democrat. And a Republican governor, Pete Wilson, appointed me to the bench.
Wow.
And that's because he sent out his investigators, his aides, and I had the support of the Latino community, agriculture, and also defense lawyers that I had come across in all of my murder cases. They supported me.
Mm-hmm. You were the first Latino judge in Monterey County in about 150 years.
Yeah, that is amazing. I never thought about that coming up here, but working, and I attribute that to Gene Martinez.
I knew Gene.
Gene was a hell of an attorney. He actually was a district attorney,
Mm-hmm.
the acting district attorney in Monterey County.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Dean Flippo, Dean won the election, but he and Dean Flippo actually were the DAs fighting each other. And Gene supported me for being president of La Raza.
Mm-hmm.
He got me involved in the local Salinas community because I was new. I came in 1986. So he helped open the doors on that. There was a lawsuit in Monterey County that Monterey County discriminated against Latinos in 1964 in the national elections. There was discrimination. So the federal government came in and they decided to make the judiciary districts. In California, judges are elected countywide. The federal government can intervene because of the Voting Rights Act of 64. And in 1964, Congress put in Monterey County. Monterey County was that bad. They put them in the original Voting Rights Act with Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee. Monterey County's violation of voting rights was so bad that Congress decided to put them in the deep South. And that's why they sent investigators
Mm-hmm.
over into Monterey County. As a result of that, and Joaquin Avila was the attorney, a great attorney who promulgated that lawsuit and won 9-0 in the Supreme Court. I was present in the Supreme Court in October 1996 when that was decided, 94. As a result of that, Wilson then appointed me to a district. I mean, we're dealing with districts.
Right.
And at that point, I was the first Latino ever appointed or elected in Monterey County in 150 years. The last Mexican judge was Jose de la Torre in Monterrey in 1836.
Right. I saw.
Now, it's not me. It's not an ego thing. It's not an ego thing at all. What that appointment shows is that the Salinas Valley is 70% Latino, and it's never had a Latino judge.
Mm-hmm.
The Monterey Peninsula has all Anglo judges, and they elect their own. But Salinas was always outvoted by Carmel Valley.
Mm-hmm.
So Salinas never had the opportunity to have a district where they could vote for their own candidate. So the Voting Right Acts case called Lopez versus Monterey County really benefited the Latino community for having one of their own, someone they could choose. And subsequent to that, I was elected. And there was another judge appointed, Marla Anderson, an African-American.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? There were only two people in Monterey County that got challenged every election, the black judge and the brown judge.
She's a great judge. She just retired recently. I was in front of her a number of times. She's fantastic.
She is. She's a personal friend of mine.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember this. You and I had met in poker and met playing poker. And then I had a case in front of you. And it was a show proof case in the criminal court. And I brought some proof in there. The client was required to do 12 AA meetings. They did their 12 AA meetings. I brought it just to show the proof. No big deal, very routine. But when I called the case, and I was appearing for another attorney, it wasn't even my case. You put it on the record. You said, just for the record, I know Chris Kane. We've played poker together. He's a very good poker player, and it will not affect my decision in this case. And the DA who was sitting at a table in front of me was like looking over his shoulder, like, who the hell is this guy? But I was so embarrassed. But it was amazing. I loved it. So
yeah, we're trained, Chris.
Yeah.
We go to called the Judicial College.
Yes.
When we're first appointed. It's a summer program.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn those tidbits of if you know the person, if you know her, put it on the record.
Sure.
And then why lose your job over a poker game?
Right.
If I didn't disclose it, we're removing you from the bench because you didn't disclose you were playing poker with a defense attorney.
Yeah, and as if you could be swayed by an $11 pot at poker night, right? Like it's kind of funny that way. So you had 22 years on the bench, and a lot of it was in criminal defense or criminal cases. Right. People are going to want to know. They will want to know what was the longest sentence you handed out.
And I want to mention another pro per case.
Sure. Of
a 5-time murder from LA County that I tried here. But the question is, what is the longest sentence I could give? Deneen Guy, who is a Superior Court judge in Santa Cruz, Deneen Guy, G-U-Y, was a DA in Monterey County. And she prosecuted a case where her victim, an 8-year-old girl, was raped and sodomized by a stepfather. The mother went on Saturday and Sunday to wash clothes, go to the dryer, go out and wash the clothes. While the mother was away, her new husband raped and sodomized the 8-year-old child twice, on a Saturday and on a Sunday. The little girl came into court and testified, which to me was heartbreaking. How can an 8-year-old child point out and give detail of what her stepfather did to her? But she did. And you could not hear a pin drop in the entire courtroom when she talked. That's what it was. It was a talk. And as judges, we have to be fair. Sometimes child's stories are exaggerated. Sometimes they lie. And worse, sometimes they're trained.
Right.
And I had a case in San Bernardino where I got a not guilty, where an 11-year-old girl was trained to lie. So that is possible. But this 8-year-old girl testified that she was raped and sodomized. The defense attorney was an outstanding lawyer, just a great lawyer. Steve Reese, deputy public defender, one of the best defense lawyers. And as a former public defender, you respect an attorney that does that. Doesn't matter. Abraham Lincoln was a defense attorney. Come on, that's your job. You defend. You're defending the Constitution. So Deneen Guy had asked for, I think, 15 years to life. And I said, no, I'm giving him a life sentence. I gave him 30 years to life, 15 years for the rape on a Saturday and 15 years consecutive on a Saturday, on a Sunday. I put them together and it was 30 years to life. That's the longest sentence I've ever given.
Mm-hmm. Were there any rulings that you made as a judge that you regret?
Yes. We are not always perfect. Judges can make a mistake in making an order that either the statute of limitations ran out and you're reversed,
mm-hmm.
or you think one defendant is more guilty than the other and they're not. And your job as a judge is to immediately correct, do everything in your power to make it just. And that is to call a hearing.
Right.
I have new information that has come to my attention that was not brought off in trial. That the Pacific Grove Police Department had a video cam of an event where an 80-year-old grandma is accused of kicking her 10-year-old granddaughter, and she was convicted in my court
mm-hmm.
with a jury. And the DA was ethical, very ethical. And he says, Judge, we didn't bring it up in trial. I didn't know about it, the DA said, but there's a video cam from the Pacific Grove Police Department that filmed the whole thing. I saw the film. I went out, we had a hearing, and I reversed the conviction. I struck it.
Mm-hmm.
I ordered a new trial. The DA didn't want to go any further.
Yeah.
Especially with an 80-year-old grandmother and a 10-year-old granddaughter. They were in a car. They were parked at a shopping center. And the little girl was trying to get out of the car in a crowded parking lot. I think it was Safeway. And the grandmother reached for her. The little girl was kicking at her, and then she slapped the girl and pushed her. That was the charge against the grandmother,
mm-hmm.
Abusing a minor.
Mm-hmm. If there's a young person, say high school or college, they want to become a judge, what advice would you give them?
I would give them the advice to read. The more you read, then you can become more knowledgeable. You understand human behavior. And the more experiences you have in life makes you a better judge.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you two examples. Larry Hayes,
mm-hmm.
Judge Hayes, one of my best friends. He worked as what do you call the guys that go on the sidewalks and they take that flat iron?
Like a mason?
A mason. He was a mason.
Mm-hmm.
He was a mason on his knees. And then he became a deputy sheriff. And then he goes to law school. Then he works with the Supreme Court of California as a clerk. And then he comes back and works for a private firm. And then he ends up in the bench.
Mm-hmm.
He had varied experience. Stephanie Halsey, Judge Halsey,
mm-hmm.
a good friend of mine. After high school, she goes to college in New York, to the New York Manhattan School of Music.
That's
Manhattan
right.
School of Music, voice soprano, and a classical piano. I asked her what was her favorite pianist that she took after, and she was Rachmaninoff. And I said, were you ever on Broadway? And she said, yeah, two plays, two plays in Broadway, mainly off Broadway. And you do that for 13 years.
Yeah.
You do that for 13 years. Nothing to do with the law.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. But it does come around. And then her mother is sick. She comes back to Seaside, takes care of her mom and her father, and ends up at the Monterey College of Law, where you attended, right?
No, I went on the East Coast.
Oh, Vermont or something. Okay. So she's at the Monterey College of Law.
Mm-hmm.
She passes her class number 1, and she ends up in the DA's office.
That's right.
And her first case was in my court.
Mm-hmm.
It's in my court. And I'm looking at her as she's giving her closing argument. And I took some drama and drama history in University of Redlands. And she's going stage right, center stage right, center stage left in front of the jury as she's giving her closing argument. And I said, wait a minute. This is a professional. She's either a professional actor at the Pasadena Playhouse,
mm-hmm.
or the Los Angeles Playhouse. There's something about her that she is a pro in drama or whatever. And then her superior comes to me and says, do you know anything about her background? First, how did she do in your, she won her case. So she's a fantastic attorney. I can't believe it. She has like a drama background. And the judge, the Superior Court, the DA told me, no. You don't understand, Judge. She went to the Manhattan School of Music and played on Broadway.
Right.
And pianist Rachmaninoff.
She has an incredible presence. I'm still intimidated every time I go in courtroom 1 where she is right now. But I don't think that goes away. There's different life skills that come into a legal career.
So what did Larry and what did Bookends? What did Larry and Stephanie do that made them a letter lawyer that you said, what would you recommend? I'm sure they would say the same thing. Read.
Mm-hmm.
Get life experiences. But the more you read, like all these law books, the more you read, the more you understand, the more you appreciate human diversity from birth to death. You learn all of that, and that makes you a better judge. So on the old days, you didn't have to go to college. You could go to a law school if you wanted to. You could work under another lawyer's office. Abraham Lincoln did that.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln worked for Stewart in his law firm. And then Stewart, when he got elected as an assemblyman in Illinois, took Abraham Lincoln with him to the Capitol in Springfield. And what Lincoln did is he drafted bills. He was like an assemblyman's aide, but he read. And as we know, the storybook version is that Lincoln, of course, read everything without going to a formal school, the formality of it.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that Abraham Lincoln was a corporate attorney. He was big-time corporate. He represented the Illinois Central Railroad, argued 15 cases in front of the Illinois Supreme Court and won all of them, all for a corporate client.
Wow.
That's how he got his power.
I did not know that.
John Davis was an attorney and one of the presidents of the Illinois Central Railroad, and he pumped money. He pumped money into Lincoln's campaign.
Interesting.
So don't give me that story about a little, cabin and wrestling.
Right.
Give me the corporate stuff.
Let's hear the truth.
Yeah, I want the truth.
So reading, of course, it's important. Life experience is important, but there's this trend now to kind of what I see as shortcutting legal research. And I'm actually using it. You and I talked about it the other day. You're using it. How is AI coming into play with legal research?
Okay, first of all, it may lessen the time.
Mm-hmm.
It may lessen the procedure, but it actually is a wonderful tool.
Right.
And it enhances the reading. So I don't see it as a shortcut. I see it as a benefit, not going around the problem, but actually enhancing your ability. You see behind me all these law books. All these law books are what we call shepherdized. Get a telephone book, and you look through the telephone book, and you see all the A's and the Z's and the R's. The same thing with these law books. I want to find a case called East San Bernardino Water District versus the City of San Bernardino, which is in this book right here. And you go through an index called Shepard's Index. And it's like an encyclopedia index, just like an encyclopedia index. Mm-hmm. And you will find East San Bernardino versus Superior Court, City of San Bernardino. And you'll find it'll say 33 California app. That stands for California Appellate Reports, second series at page 754. So this index, this manual paper index, gives you the route to find the case. Well, is this case quoted by any other courts? Well, yeah, it's in the Illinois Supreme Court, or it's in the Massachusetts Supreme Court. So it lists all of these cases like an index. Under water rights, you'll find all this index. What AI does, artificial intelligence, Westlaw, Lexis, Medics, is that it synthesizes everything dramatically so that you can find this case without going through this formal index in less than 20 seconds.
Right.
In less than 20 seconds. Here in Salinas, I've had second grade children come into my chambers and they see, just like Chris's library here, all these books. The first thing the kids do is, "Did you read all these books, Judge?" said, I sure did, every page. And they, oh, no, I'm only kidding. And I taught them that when you go into the Encyclopedia Britannica, there's an index. You all know how to use an encyclopedia. Oh, yeah. You go to the very end, A to Z, it's an index. And you go in there, I want to find something about George Washington. And so they go under George Washington, and they can find it colonial, president, but they've shepherdized it, they've indexed it. I said, I can use the same system in a computer. I type in the case, I type in George Washington, whatever, and in 20 seconds, it'll give me every article on planet Earth dealing with George Washington in 20 seconds. So it has enhanced. There's controversy because some artificial intelligence is sloppy. Mm-hmm. It has not been perfected, and actually gives for the attorneys, gives imprecise and wrong citations.
Right.
Unpublished, published, and a case that has nothing to do with a case in point. And judges and their law clerks are beginning to punish, to do sanctions against attorneys who do not do sufficient research and actually check the points and authorities. You turned in this brief. The cases you quote, Mr. Maldonado, were not here. You're fined $500.
You signed your name to that brief.
You sign your name to that brief. Right. It's yours. You own it.
Right. So I found that I'm using AI to make me a better attorney. It makes it quicker. I can easily find the cases that are on point. It'll help me find exactly what I'm looking for and make sure I'm not missing any of the cases, especially the ones that are against me. I don't want to go in and embarrass myself. But it helps me write a more powerful brief. And that's ultimately my goal. Like I want to be friends with the DAs, but I also want them to be like, oh crap, Chris is on the case. He's going to bury us with a solid brief. And we better respect what he says because he's been right before. He's going to be right again.
What I've heard is that the DA, he's going to overpower us.
Yeah.
Overpower us.
That's the goal. That's the goal. So speaking of DAs, I work with them. I work against them all the time. And they're people just like everyone else. Some of them are very ambitious. Some of them are very stubborn. Some of them are great. What would your advice be to a young DA?
Learn the ropes from the other people in the office. Follow their advice.
Mm-hmm.
They've been through it. And the number one rule for a district attorney is in the American Bar Association Code of Ethics. When I was in my 20s, I sat on the state bar, the California State Bar. Mm-hmm. I was actually a referee, a judge. And as being a state bar referee in Los Angeles, LA, I would get an attorney's file and they go, it's your case, review it. And I held a hearing like a judge, the referee. I would call in the attorney, usually attorney, ask them if they did or did not do certain things. And 99% of them were honest. And I would go through and say, for example, I'm going to put this letter in your file. And if you do it again, it'll come out as your first strike. It'll be revisited again. And now you'll have two cases against you, not one. Because the attorney has a long record, she or he is professional. They've done a lot of good things for the community. If they're bad, then you recommend disbarment. That's the worst. You cannot have a license. Or you can put them on probation. So the DAs who are in a young position, they should study and follow the recommendations and the training they have, the ethical training. The most important ethical rule is that you never prosecute a case where you have reasonable doubt. You never prosecute a case where you personally have a reasonable doubt. And I've used that before where I was handed a file by a supervisor. I looked into it and I said, I cannot prosecute this. Because I have a reasonable doubt as to her guilt. She may be really innocent. And the DA, the superior, has an ethical duty to check it out.
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing, is to follow that rule. If you have a reasonable doubt, pick it up with your superiors, but do not prosecute a case where you personally have reasonable doubt.
Well, they say that district attorneys are the most powerful people in the criminal justice system. even more powerful than judges because they can decide what charges to bring. And then on some level, they decide effectively who lives and who dies by charging a capital case in a certain way. So it's just an enormous responsibility.
You know who said the same thing?
Who's that?
Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
And Robert Kennedy was the Attorney General
Mm-hmm.
of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And people said, well, he's your brother. President Kennedy is your brother. Yeah, but but why did you take the job? He said the same thing you did, Chris. Being a prosecutor is the most powerful job because you can find justice, you can dismiss it, you can reduce charges, and you're an officer of the court, and you tell the court the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very powerful job. Abraham Lincoln would disagree with you. Abraham Lincoln would say, the people are the most powerful element
Mm-hmm.
in the judicial system because it is the people that decide guilt or innocence. One of your friends and my friends, Charles Shivers,
Mm-hmm.
he was in my court as a public defender. And he gave a 2-minute speech that I consider one of the most powerful speeches I've ever heard in my life as a lawyer and as a judge. And he told the jury, in our system of democracy, you have a representative. You have an assemblywoman, a state senator. She votes for you. But in a jury trial, there is no layer. There is no other person. It's you. And you decide whether someone lives or dies. You decide whether someone is guilty or not guilty. And that is the most powerful parts of our democracy. So I'll back down. I'll agree with you. The DAs and juries are the most powerful people in the legal system.
Sure. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we've talked about prosecutors. How are we doing on time?
Oh, no, we're doing good. I'm doing fine.
We talked about prosecutors. What advice would you give to young or aspiring defense attorneys?
In law school, we were taught in criminal procedure, criminal law, federal courts and federal system, that the job of a defense attorney is to battle for your client. You battle for her because if you don't, the system will fall apart. A DA, she will win a case that she should not win because the defense did not provide an adequate battle. You have to have two sides battling. And the theory is, in a good battle, the truth comes out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. I had, as a defense attorney in Ontario, I had a case of a woman who was drunk in public and that she disturbed the peace and that she urinated in a bar. That's what the DA said. That's what witnesses said. My defense was that she went with her family into the bar, sat at a table, was served beer, and there was sawdust on the floor, like typical bars in Salina, sawdust, or Berkeley, sawdust on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument was made that she urinated on the floor. The disturbance that was caused inside the restaurant bar was inside. It was not outside on a public street, And so I said, this is open to everyone. And she's not creating a disturbance outside on the sidewalk. And I fought hard, and she was found not guilty. Had another case, a sexual assault case, where my client, the defendant, was in the mountains in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles forest, and a school bus stopped, and a 15-year-old girl got out, was walking to her parents' cabin, and he was accused of chasing her, tackling her, and trying to rape her. And I was a defense attorney. I got an acquittal. I got a not guilty. And the reason being is because the 15-year-old, when she came to court, dressed up, she looked like a 22-year-old UCLA student. And I punched holes in her story, inconsistencies. that he was working in the area with another crew, and he may have walked towards her and frightened her. He did not tackle her. He did not try to undo her chains, and that she had it all wrong. And I told the jury, I'm not here to prove his innocence. I'm here to prove that her story is wrong, and it lends to reasonable doubt. Did it happen or did it not happen? I don't know. If you don't know, not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
In England, there's guilty, not proved, and innocence.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as not guilty in England. It's guilty, not proved, or innocent. I don't know which is the better system. And then afterwards, after the case was done, my client told me that he did it.
Wow.
Okay?
How did you react?
I was mad. I was angry. I wanted to punch him in the face.
Sure.
But I did my job.
Mm-hmm.
I pointed out the inconsistencies. I pointed out that she was there for the glory to come into court the way she came in, and that I told the jury ethically and solidly, I'm not here to prove his innocence. I'm just here to ask you, is he innocent? Is he guilty or not guilty? And if you don't know, that's reasonable doubt. You're obligated to vote not guilty. And there's the jury instructions that we judges give in criminal trials. Jury gets the instruction. They're in the jury room reading it. Well, you see, Judge Maldonado, he said, there are two sides to every story. If one interpretation points to guilt, and the other interpretation points to innocence, and they're equal, you must choose the one that points to innocence. That is the law in America.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the lawyer programs on TV, on the majority, are inaccurate. I think the more accurate ones are the movies that come out, the full movie, whether it be on Hulu, Netflix, or whatever. And the one thing that I liked about Law and Order by Dick Wolf, the old series, is that the scenes that they show with judges in their chambers and the attorneys, those are the most accurate portrayals
Mm-hmm.
of criminal law. They're actual. They're real. I go, my goodness, that's what really occurs.
Right. The judge has their robe off. They talk
Right.
frankly.
Yeah, they talk frankly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, let's end this with a hypothetical for you. If you could commit one crime, and maybe you get punished or maybe you don't, but in your commission of that crime, it will never be committed again. So you go out and you speed, and there'll be no more speeding. What crime would you commit?
This is speeding. And who says no more speeding? The judge or the...
It'll happen to the whole universe. It'll change the world. By going out and speeding, you eliminate speeding. Just never can be possible again. It's a fantastic hypothetical that will never be real. But you have to pick the crime.
The reason I say that it'll never happen again is because there are always what we call necessity. The crime of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And I've represented women and men who committed a crime out of necessity. One of them I went into court and got a not guilty on the crime of necessity. Speeding, never commit speeding again. You're in a roadway. It's not a neighborhood, it's just a roadway. Speed limit is 35 miles per hour. And there's a tricycle. And that tricycle goes and darts in front of you. And you know you're going to hit the child. You know you're going to hit the child. You gun it to 80 miles an hour, go around the child, and go off the road and damage a post box or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's a crime of necessity. I could give you other examples of crimes of necessity.
So if you could pick any crime, Would it be speeding or would you pick something else? Because if you would have to molest a child to do away with all child molestation, or you'd have to commit murder to end murder in the world.
That would never happen again?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I have a cheeky answer, and obviously I'm prepared. So
thank you.
My cheeky answer to that is perjury. And if I would get up and easily perjure myself, and I'd get it reduced, I'd get just slap on the wrist, and then we'd have no perjury. Then you'd feel the confidence through the entire justice system that every witness were telling the truth. So that's what I would pick. But obviously I've had weeks to prepare that one.
Here's another hypothetical.
Sure.
You're charged in New Mexico with the murder of a railroad engineer.
Mm-hmm.
You go to prison. And in 2 days, you're going to be executed. You're innocent. And through the grace of somebody, you try to escape. And as you try to escape, you kill a guard. And when you kill the guard, you do get freedom. But now you're charged with a new crime, murder of a guard.
Mm-hmm.
But you were innocent when they put you there.
Right.
What's the moral theorem of that?
Yeah, that's a good one. So there has to be some accountability, right? And I think that in general, we don't allow the necessity defense for murder. So, but there's going to be some accountability there for doing that. And if there's no magic answer, if there's no secret thing that will reveal that you're innocent of that the first charge, it's really hard to get around that. So,
exactly.
I don't know. I think it would be a good movie.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
There was. And it's an actual true story also.
Well, how did it come? How did it play out?
The governor of New Mexico gave a special pardon afterwards.
Mm.
He did, I think, about another 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then he pardoned him.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Hey, I really appreciate having you on.
Not a problem. I thank you for inviting me.
It's been a pleasure.
I haven't been in front of a TV camera in, I guess, 20 years.
I like getting to know you better. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.